I never used to feel sick before. I used to feel like the very opposite. I mean, doing it or watching it, I used to feel real on a show.
You felt ill this afternoon because you're getting better. You're becoming healthy, that's all.
Yes, yes.
Stop it, please, I beg you! It's a sin! It's a sin!
Another flashback episode. Hooray! Or in the words of Grace Randolph, but dubbed over by me so you don't have the inside of your skull scratched by Grace Randolph. Another flashback episode! Hooray! Oh wait, Grace doesn't like this one? Well, now I'm intrigued. This being a flashback episode, it spares us the need to recap the events of Acolyte episode 6 because these two episodes have all but nothing to do with one another. But in the name of completeness and sticking to form, here is a lengthy, extensive recap of the most plot-relevant events of the Acolyte episode 6.
One winner later.
Anyway, so the Acolyte episode 7, the one before it's finally over.
Do you remember the Shire, Mr. Furlong? It'll be spring soon.
This one gives us the alternative facts retelling of episode 3's fateful silliness. We get to see things from the Jedi's point of view. Several important broad brush questions need answering. What happened on Brendok 16 years ago? What are the twins, Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Fannie Mae, and how were they created? What is meant by the power of one, the power of two, the power of many? Why were the Jedi on Brendok? Who killed all the witches? What prompted Fannie Mae to go on her assassination quest? What is Jedi Master Squid Game feeling so guilty about? Why did Tommen Baratheon kill himself a second time? What connects these events to series antagonist Smilo Ran? Additionally, since we are getting the other side's telling of episode 3, some more granular questions also need answering. As I pointed out in my review of that wonderful episode, Baby May runs in to try and burn her sister alive and speaks the words,
"You can't go. We're stuck here now."
Meaning that she has already done some presumed bad thing before setting fire to baby Occupational Safety and Health Administration's notebook. So what precisely did she do? What caused the entire Vagina Fortress to catch fire? Additionally, absent from the piles of lesbo corpses we see during Squid Game's escape is Horny Lesbian. So is she still alive somewhere, maybe pulling the strings or the threads from behind the scenes? Now, I have attempted many predictions over the course of this show, and a fair few of them have turned out to be right. More often than not, the later predictions have been more accurate than the earlier ones, not because all the many pieces of the plot have begun coalescing into discernible patterns, but because I have got better at putting myself into the minds of people who simply cannot write for shit. Does this prediction constitute any kind of satisfying payoff to anything set up in the show? Well, then it's wrong. To paraphrase Master Yoda, the secret to decoding the Acolyte is that you must train yourself to let go of anything you think is good. Thus did I predict that Smilo Ren would turn out to be Temu Ezra, only after reluctantly acknowledging that having him be one of the mothers would be too dramatically satisfying, not to mention efficient. Thus was I correct that the twins would find themselves in the custody of their respective enemies, Fannie Mae with Squid Game and Occupational Safety and Health Administration with Smilo, not because the show has anything particularly interesting to do with this switcheroo, but because it's the easiest and cheapest way to have characters exposit reveals at each other. Pertinently, in the case of this video, I had this to say on the true nature of the twins and what they represent when reviewing episode 3. Gay, British, soy, vegan, porn.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la.
Yaddy Mundi, fresh from not being born yet. The two sides of the Force. My theory since I first watched episode 3 is that Mother Anus Eye has attempted to create a Vergence by combining the entire Force, light and dark side, in the form of the thread, and shoved that thread right up into Horny Lesbian's loamy womb. That's a sentence. Twins were the result because the Force cannot long be jammed in the loamy womb of a horny lesbian before it naturally reverts to its bifurcated state. And so Fannie Mae is the dark side embodied, and Occupational Safety and Health Administration is the light side embodied. And it's this, not their actual material conditions, that produces their diametrically opposed characters. The show could still spring a surprise or two, and it'll doubtless try to invoke perspective to escape the charge that it's just recreating the binary good versus evil conflict it pretends it's too intelligent to go in for, because no clever things have ever been produced within a framework of moral absolutes. So even if Fannie Mae is the embodiment of the dark side, and even if this makes her impulsive and aggressive and hot-tempered, her evil actions are not the product of the dark side, per se. The dark side influences her temperament, and only her temperament, because the show doesn't necessarily want us to view the dark side as evil. Rather, they'll be the embodiment of the old W.H. Auden line from September 1st, 1939. I and the public know what all school children learn. Those to whom evil is done do evil in return. The critique of the Jedi, then, will be that their imposition of rigid philosophy and codes of ethics, and their imperialistic moral certainty actually creates the aberrant conditions that make dark side adept evil. That would be my guess as to what the show is going for. Regardless, whatever story they try to tell, the one thing we can be reasonably sure of is that they will tell it horribly. We'll be revisiting that a little bit later, but for the sake of full disclosure, I must also admit that I got several predictions, especially early on, wrong. I still think that one of the Lesbo mums is behind events, but I was wrong to say one of them would be Smilo. I suggested that Smilo might be a secret third child of the witches, and though this hasn't been proven wrong yet, I am increasingly of the opinion that this would make too much narrative and dramatic sense, so they probably won't do it. If I'd been asked to predict the events of Episode 7 after watching Episode 3, and here I'm pulling from various predictions made during that Episode 3 video, I'd have laid out the following story skeleton. The Jedi were not on Brendok by accident, they were here for a reason. They were already aware of the witches, because the witches told us they'd been hunted to the verge of extinction and had to flee the Republic. Having the Jedi playing a part in that would suit the show's purposes. The Jedi were moreover already aware of the children, and had come specifically to retrieve them, peacefully or otherwise. Given the entire massive Vagina Fortress catches fire, with plentiful explosions, none of which could reasonably have been caused by a single burning notebook, and given how rigidly the camera stuck to Occupational Safety and Health Administration during Episode 3 to deny us the bigger picture, I'd have said that Fannie Mae would have somehow provoked an act of violence, and the Jedi would capitalize on some earlier sabotage of the fortress, as hinted at in this scene in Episode 3. They would then kill the witches, who quite clearly had not died in an explosion, in a bid to steal their children. And it's the guilt and blame born of this massacre that prompts Tommen to kill himself and Fannie Mae to go on her murder mission 16 years later. Because school taught me that you get extra marks for showing your workings for some reason, here's the evidence trail as I laid it out at the close of my Episode 3 video.
Yes.
As a final note, the most important bits to remember for the next episode are that Fannie Mae accused the Jedi of attacking unarmed innocents in Episode 1, that Tommen Baratheon killed himself out of guilt in Episode 2, while in Episode 3 we never see how the witch commune is destroyed, and it is entirely unbelievable that Fannie Mae setting one fire with one notebook set all of Fort Vagina ablaze. Her line about being stuck here now suggests she had acted prior to the attempted combustion of her sister. The fact Squid Game was already in Fort Vagina while the fire was spreading suggests the Jedi were involved, while the camera being locked on Occupational Safety and Health Administration, even when it would have been more natural to jump away to the most significant events as they unfolded, well, all this combined suggests three things. Number 1, the Jedi are implicated in the death of the Coven. Number 2, Fannie Mae herself is more directly implicated in the death of the Coven than the setting of one small fire. And number 3, we will get Fannie Mae's POV later in the series, either as a dedicated flashback episode or in a flashback section, quite possibly a dream sequence, in a later episode. Now, all those workings are entirely accurate and correct, and yet the predicted story skeleton is, mostly wrong? If not in its details, then certainly in its conclusions. But this is not my fault, teacher. Oh, no, because you see, all I'm doing here is marking somebody else's homework. I am not the You are the the writers are the My mistake was in drawing inferences, connecting dots, using words like because and therefore and given this and which prompts, all of which presumes that the Acolyte pays attention to trivial things like causality, setup, payoff, and motive. As is by now readily apparent, the Acolyte does not. It does no such thing. This is why, as I've had cause to lament several times across these videos, it's so very difficult to make predictions about this show. It almost always involves writing a better story than the one we've got. Now for the latest installment of the worst possible decisions. It's time to hit the title slate like we're Harvey Weinstein slamming one of those innocent... We begin back on Brendok 16 years ago, where we find the Jedi. Actually, fuck it, never mind. We begin with a Detectorist Star Wars special, with Andy, Lance, Sophie, and the rest of the Danebury Metal Detecting Club on the hunt for a Force Vengeance. I was actually going to continue memeing along these lines, but it does occur to me that very few of you will likely have seen Detectorists, which is a shame because it's an excellent show, one of those quaint, heartwarming, distinctively English comedies that seldom get made these days that you should definitely check out. The Acolyte is an entirely different type of comedy, the unintentional and tragic kind of comedy, the mistaken tragicomedy. It's the constant feature of everything Disney Lucasfilm squeezes out of its rusty exhaust port. You'll have fun laughing at it, but if there's a bright scent at the Star Wars, you're in the era that's farthest from. You've got Squid Game shoving some Carrie-Anne moss into a box there. You've got Trinity probing the dirt. Leslie Headland let herself go for a couple of days so she could cameo as a Wookiee. She's doing some metal detecting. Somewhere off-screen, people are literally combing the desert, and Tommen Baratheon is picking shrubs and putting them in some sort of blender. He looks mildly bored by all of this, and oh boy does that become relevant later. Don't get me wrong, gardening when you're under the age of 70 gets boring pretty quickly. Nobody Tommen's age wants to be green-fingered and planting seeds in the dirt, when you could be putting those fingers in that seed to work in the pussy. Cat Hilton Luxury Cat Hotel Cattery. Every room has central heating, soft fleece bedding, premium litter trays, a gym, a play area. Look at all the cute little fluff balls. Don't you just want to get your fingers in there and give him a nice good rub? Not Tommen though, he just wants to fuck him. It's worth noting here that we know precious little about Tommen, besides the fact that his hairline conducted a disorderly retreat in the 16 years between now and his suicide, and that something in this episode has to make him feel guilty enough to go into a decade's silent meditation before finally relieving the burden of his existence from the broken back of the Canadian healthcare system. We know nothing at all about his life before any of this, and so we know nothing at all about him going into this episode. And this is going to be a problem, because his decisions pretty well determine the entire plot here, and to call them unmotivated would be an insult to procrastinators worldwide. We get a good sense of this in this very next scene, where we join our motley band of incompetents who do such a bad job of being Jedi that they have to use metal detectors to sense the Force.
You must eat, Padawan.
I'm not hungry.
It's unwise to insult a Wookiee's cooking.
I'm just sick of eating noodle legs. And I want to go home to Coruscant.
Tommen's actor, Dean Charles Chapman, hails from Essex in England, and people in Essex have a hard enough job pronouncing basic English words, so let's not be too hard on him when he struggles to pronounce Coruscant. Coruscant? Coruscant sounds like some sort of Veruca cream. Anyway, I play this clip because it's vitally important. This is the extent of Tommen's motives throughout this episode. Tommen is bored of picking shrubs. He wants to go back to Coruscant for some reason. If you're struggling to make the link between
I want to go home to Coruscant
and don't worry, you're not alone, but the writers couldn't be bothered to come up with anything else, so we're just going to have to run with it.
We've been here for 7 weeks, and there's no one here, and if we were going to find something, we probably would have found it by now.
100 years ago, this planet was cataloged as lifeless because of a hyperspace disaster. Yet this planet, Brendok, is thriving.
So there's some plants here. Big deal.
Do not center around your anxieties.
But if only I knew that what we were doing was somehow important or meaningful.
We are looking for a vengeance.
And this here is the source of the problem. Because The Acolyte, like many Disney shows before it, really struggles to conceptualize off-screen drama. This is not a consistent problem. Sometimes with some shows, with some characters in some shows, it really is as simple as saying that none of these people have lives off-screen. None of them have history. None of them have pre-vocalized thoughts. If it's a Zack Snyder movie, very few of them have vocalized thoughts even. This isn't a consistent problem though, because at least for main characters, The Acolyte's writers and cast members seem to have constructed quite a large amount of headcanon. We've covered in previous videos interviews with Daphne Keane, who told us all about the budding romance between Jecki Stardust and Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And here, for another example, Leslie Headland suggests that Amanda Stenberg spent quite a bit of time exploring the characters, I use that word advisedly, of Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Fannie Mae.
And I felt like Amandla, when she understood the breadth of what she would be doing, dug so deep into both of the girls, early on deciding their walks, like early on deciding, what their sort of animal familiar might be.
You serious?
If they had one, deciding who was born first, who was born second. Going into a bunch of really granular things that I was very impressed by, and I don't think the whole theme wouldn't work if her performance wasn't how great as it is.
The problem in both cases is that little, if any, of this headcanon actually made it into the script or onto the screen. In the case of Jackie, there were a couple of vague hints conveyed in Keen's performance, particularly in the beginning of episode 4, and then a hasty and contrived bonding session later in that episode that was principally there because they knew they were about to kill her off and they realized she wasn't really a character yet and nobody would care. But most of the ideas never made it out of the conceptual headcanon stage, which is a shame because, as I've said before, some of the ideas there were genuinely, if only potentially, fruitful. What I wouldn't give for a single character in The Acolyte. Unfortunately, the scene in episode 6 where Occupational Safety and Health Administration blandly reminds Smilo that he killed Jackie prompts him to issue an equivalently bland riposte about deep loving that falls flat largely because it's referencing headcanon that the audience isn't privy to. In Stenberg's case, she seems genuinely to be a moron, and she'd probably have profited more from figuring out what Occupational Safety and Health Administration's basic traits and motives are than from divining her spirit animal or whatever the fuck. But hey, who am I to fault her alternative ways of knowing? She don't fuck with my discourse, yo. She from de ghetto, which I think is an upmarket Danish coffee house. It's a problem particularly to any show overseen by a writer's room as opposed to a single creative. You can have as many conversations about your character, their history, their inner life, thoughts, feelings, and philosophy as you like, but at some point you do have to surface those things in your script. It doesn't have to be overt, it doesn't have to be spelled out, a lot of it can be implied, but it does have to be realized. In these instances, The Acolyte suffers for presuming that too much headcanon has been implied in its off-screen moments, leaving what might genuinely have been fleshed out and thoughtful characters feeling banal and empty, in the case of Jackie, or banal and schizo in the case of Occupational Safety and Health Administration and Fannie Mae. Tommen here, Tommen evidences a different problem though, a lack of preconception and a lack of headcanon. One of the surest ways to tell when a character hasn't spent any time living in its creator's head is when things are exposited at them for their benefit that they should already know, when they ask questions they should have already asked, and when they react as if they've been in place for 5 seconds despite the script telling us they've been there for, in this case, 7 weeks. 7 weeks, Tommen. You've had almost 2 months to ask this question, to voice these complaints, to speak up, to say or do anything to alleviate this acute sense of boredom you have developed. Not that this should be necessary, because Tommen is Trinity's apprentice, so our premise here requires that these two haven't spoken to each other at all about any of this in the 7 weeks they've been pulling up shrubs. Requires, indeed, that they didn't speak to each other about any of this while flying all the way out here from Coruscant. Requires, indeed, that they didn't speak to each other about any of this while being given this task at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Tommen is only now bored enough to mention how bored he is because the script only now needs him to be bored enough to mention how bored he is in order to prompt Trinity and Squid Game to tell him the basic setup, which is for the audience's benefit, not his. This is not how characters are supposed to work.
We are looking for a virgins.
What's a virgins?
A concentration of force energy centered around a location.
A virgins could create life, like what we see on this planet. It's a power that should be studied, protected. Nothing could be more important to the Jedi. This is a noble mission.
A noble mission that you just kind of forgot to mention at all in any context for the last 2 months. Rightio? There is some haphazard lore stuff going on here. The hyperspace disaster presumably references the Great Hyperspace Disaster that features in Disney's High Republic comics. The basic story there, as I understand it, is that a transport ship collided in hyperspace with a warship owned by the Nihil, a band of increasingly fanaticized pirates who used Force monsters to hunt and kill Jedi during the centuries of prosperous piece the Acolyte told us all about in episode 1. The wreckage principally threatened the Hetzal system, but bits and pieces of it dropped out of hyperspace all over the place, and so we presume one such chunk wiped out all life on Brendok. Seemingly, this Force Vergence they're looking for with their metal detectors for some reason was responsible for completely rebuilding the Brendok ecosystem inside of a century, given we're here in something like 132 BBY, and the Great Hyperspace Disaster took place in 232 BBY. Also, though most people connect Force Vergences to Anakin, to the extent they bothered remembering anything about the prequels at all, I think I'm right in saying that even in the old expanded universe, a Force Vergence or a Force Nexus was more commonly a place than a person. The cave on Dagobah was a Force Nexus, the mountain on which the Jedi Temple on Coruscant is placed is another, likewise the Valley of the Jedi and the Valley of the Dark Lords on Korriban. Hunting for it with metal detectors does seem to be a bit dumb. You're Jedi, you can sense the Force. Qui-Gon didn't have to run a metal detector over Anakin to confirm he was a Vergence. He did what all weird old monks do to young boys, he just felt him up, and then he ran a blood test to make sure he'd not caught anything. This leads us to a slightly more serious bit of silliness in the setup. The Jedi have been here for almost 2 months, and Tommen is bored because all they've been doing in that time is picking daisies and scanning shrubs. He explicitly bitches that if there were anyone or anything to find, they should have already found it. Which would be true if the show had remembered that the Jedi have a spaceship, and if they'd given the planet a cursory scan from orbit or even just a couple of flyovers, because a pretty short walk from their current location is a massive vagina forest, positively infested with lesbians. You might have spotted it. It kind of stands out. You'd think any basic aerial surveillance would have picked that up. You wouldn't even need to scan for heat or life signs, just look for the only artificial lights on the planet coming out of that giant vagina fortress over there at nighttime. But they didn't do that because if they'd done that, then things might be more interesting. After all, the impression given, I think deliberately in episode 3, was that the Jedi were there deliberately, with purpose and up to no good from the Witch's point of view. This is by far the stronger idea because it minimizes the script's reliance on dumb luck or dumb stupidity, and because it gives the Jedi a solid and definite motive that can then be explored when we get their POV. After all, if the show were truly committed to upholding Creamy Sheev's good as a point of view Anakin, moral relativism, and exploring what it really means, then passing that as a disagreement over motive is much stronger a hook dramatically than Jedi accidentally turning up on a planet that just so happens to have lesbian witches who just so happen to get killed, mostly by accident really. I don't want to jump the gun here, but it is such a dramatic waste that I do need to at least begin setting it up. Almost everything that happens in this episode is either unmotivated, born of casual misinterpretation, or a flat-out accident. We are not actually going to get a, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil moment, nor any meaningful examination of the Jedi's value and motives, because the show has opted for incident over design and miscommunication over a conflict of visions. But hey, by now we should have seen this coming, right? How many times have I said it? The surest way to predict the Acolyte is to ask yourself, what is the most dramatically inert way this story could be told? And then to pick something slightly worse. The next morning, we find the Jedi Knights doing much the same thing as the day before, still metal detecting, still trying to find their their Vergence. Tommen is still looking bored because yes, boredom is the strongest motive the writers have for his character. Pretty strong motive for my character too, reviewing episode 6. Jesus Christ, that was dull. At least Tommen didn't have to watch that.
My Padawan is too distracted to appreciate the significance of a Vergence, nor are we sure that it's the cause of life on Brendok.
Why? Why is he distracted? Might he have been less distracted had you told him why he was picking shrubs for the last 7 weeks at some point during the last 7 weeks, rather than waiting for the camera to turn on to do all of that? And if this episode is referencing the Great Hyperspace Disaster, then how can it be anything other than the Vergence that brought life back to Brendok? You can't recreate a whole planetary ecosystem in under a century, Trinity. Most of these trees are probably older than that.
It was disturbed. Unbalanced.
You were disturbed. Do not confuse Torben's feelings with your own. I do not tell him answers to ease his mind. I teach him to seek the answers for himself.
I'm afraid you're just going to have to get used to this. Characters in this episode in particular inhabit a kind of Schrodinger's box. Inside the box, they have every conceivable set of motives and emotions, but you never see them. They only take on one definite motive and emotion when another character tells them that's what they are thinking and feeling, and you can't ever hope to trace these back to a cause because the cause exists inside the box. It could be nothing. It could be everything. It could be anything. It is in fact all at the same time. So Squid Game is unbalanced and unstable in this episode because fuck it, why not? Because he needs to be unbalanced and unstable in order to explain the batshit insane way he's going to act from time to time later. While Tommen Baratheon isn't in fact bored of pulling shrubs pointlessly, he's bored because nobody's told him why he's pulling shrubs pointlessly. And not telling your Padawans why things are happening, even when you see them being bored and frustrated, is good teaching. Either he'll figure it out for himself, even though he's apparently never even heard of Avergence before, so he can't possibly be expected to figure it out for himself, or he'll get so pissed off he turns to the dark side out of sheer, unrelenting tedium of his existence. This is an experience familiar to any of us who went through state schools, but the Jedi Order is not supposed to be a fucking state school. It's supposed to be the Jedi Order. If you let your Padawans flirt with the dark side, literally, as we'll see later, because they are really, really, really fucking bored, that failure is on you, Trinity, my dear, and you should be sacked. Oh, what's that? No, you're a card-carrying member of the Jedi Teachers Union, I bet. Yeah, sure, okay, you're unsackable. No matter how useless you are.
You disagree. That's why I have a Padawan and you do not.
But you're being a dick to your Padawan. Your Padawan is so bored he is willing to do anything to get back to Coruscant. You've dragged him on a mission without telling him why. You've waited for him to learn why, even though he doesn't know the name of the thing you're looking for and has never encountered the concept before. Squid Game's approach here is self-evidently better suited to teaching Padawans. You're Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones, and he's Obi-Wan in Revenge of the Sith. You are the bad teacher. He is a better one. You can't really undercut this by inventing some sort of psychic instability on Squid Game's part, Trinity. But oh no, yeah, just like Tommen's boredom, it's going to be a driving factor behind what follows. Squid Game's amorphous instability, that nobody's detected or commented on before, or held against him in his trials to stop him becoming a master, is likewise pivotal.
So, follow the river? We haven't covered the Northlands yet. Meet us back at the camp.
Here's an idea. Use your spaceship. Fly. Get altitude. You'll get a much better look from way up there, and we won't have to see some of the most dodgy-looking CGI speeder bike stuff you will ever see. At least until 20 minutes later, when it gets even worse. This is the point at which truth is a point of view begins to be taken a little too literally, since much of what's left of this episode is just episode 3, but filmed from a slightly different angle. It was always going to be a tricky thing to pull off and justify in a season composed of just 8 30-ish minute episodes that costs $180 million to make. If we're to spend any substantial amount of time revisiting old content, we have to learn something substantially new if we're to avoid it feeling like very expensive filler. I'm not going to prejudice the audience by saying whether or not we do learn something substantially new and worth it in this episode that justifies replaying whole stretches of episode 3 from different angles, but the answer's no. Here then, Squid Game comes upon the Boonta Tree, and oh god, oh no, it's the world's least identical twins again. Oh, fuck the acting, oh no, the dialogue.
How did you know I was here? When I can't find you, I look here. Boonta Tree's so beautiful. Let it go, May. Stop! Why do you always have to do things like that? Why do you always run off alone?
For fuck's sake, you might have at least spared us having to listen to that again. Now, given this episode has established that the Jedi are not, in fact, here with dark or sinister motives, given the previous scene established they were in fact quite keen on finding something or someone, you might be sitting there wondering, why is Squid Game acting all sus here? Why is he sneaking around and hiding from the children? This doesn't seem very Jedi-like. Fair enough if you were on a hostile alien world and trying to avoid detection, but you're here on a miracle planet trying to detect things. The Jedi are supposed to be diplomats. It is and has always been one of their core functions in the galaxy. Keepers of the peace, not soldiers, etc. Diplomats don't generally skulk around spying on children and trying to make people suspicious of their actions and intent. That is, in fact, pretty much the opposite of what diplomats are supposed to do. Actual Russian spies, disguised as diplomats, would act less suspiciously than Squid Game is here, less suspiciously than he will continue to act across the first half or more of this episode, until he recovers something something like his senses, of course, at which point he becomes evil from the show's point of view. But you see, if we had the Jedi acting all Jedi-like in this show, we couldn't manufacture a conflict based upon a misunderstanding later. This is how modern writing works, kids. People can act as dumb and out of character as the script needs them to, in order to achieve whatever the script wants to happen, rather than stepping out of hiding and introducing himself like an innocent, non-threatening Jedi who is genuinely here to study this planet and its life forms. Squid Game hides behind his tree and radios for Trinity, but unfortunately she is not picking up, so he decides to sneak after the children as horny lesbian leads them away. He traces them all the way to a small door at the bottom of Fort Vagina, but when he tries poking around there himself, gosh darn it, he just can't find the entrance. Horny lesbian, for her part, looked like she was scanning around to make sure she hadn't been followed. We have to assume from this scene, and especially this later one, that despite their strength in the thread being very powerful, to paraphrase episode 6, the witches are completely incapable of sensing a Jedi's presence even when he is standing just a few feet away from them, except when they are completely aware of the Jedi's presence and able to remotely hack their minds. It's fine, they're women, they're not meant to be consistent. But being for now incapable of sensing the Jedi, horny lesbian outside the fortress is reduced to visual scanning. I guess they don't have any guards or sentries guarding the approach to the fortress who could have spotted Squid Game moseying around out there. Oh, except for all the guards and sentries we know they have thanks to episode 3, which told us they were keeping tabs on the Jedi, but never mind. Were Squid Game not so obsessed with trying to penetrate the vagina, he might have thought this a little bit suspicious. Why should these people be afraid? Why should they think they're being followed? Wait, does that mean they know we're here? But that's the thing about vaginas. They have a kind of magical allure that ensnares the minds of men and lesbians alike. When you're trying to find your way into a vagina, you don't have time for thoughts. Like a great many virgins before him, Squid Game, unable to locate the entrance to the vagina, decides to go scrabbling up the dry, scaly exterior looking for another way in. It's a daunting climb. He has to avoid all these loose tufts of moldy fluff. After presumed hours, during which he scales his way almost to the top of the vagina, he finally finds another hole and worms his way inside, only to find that the vagina is positively infested by lesbians. Clearly, this is a deviant and hostile vagina, and it must be purged of its lesbianism before it has the chance to corrupt the children. But Squid Game is captivated by the lesbians. He stays a little while to watch as they do strange things with their hands, stimulating a small spot right at the top of the vagina. This witchcraft is strange and terrifying to him, and Squid Game has seen enough. He returns to camp to inform his friends that he totally made it all the way into the vagina. Honestly, guys, it was really easy, but really, in truth be told, it was kind of cold and dry and weird, and lots of women had already been there. He didn't like it very much. Not all it's cracked up to be. That extended euphemism now complete. Seriously? Seriously, show? Squid Game free climbed up the side of Mount Vagina and saved several hours with the aid of a scene transition. How the hell did he manage that? How was he not spotted? We know the lesbian space witches posed guards, and we know from episode 3 that they had the Jedi under surveillance. They just kind of forgot to surveil the Jedi, spending most of his day free climbing up the side of their vagina, I guess. That's fucking convenient. And why is this Squid Game's approach? You know the planet's inhabited now. You know where these people live. Somehow you hadn't already spotted it, despite it being a massive vagina fortress that's clearly visible from the sky that you had to fly through to land on the planet. Why creep in and spy on them? You are a Jedi. You had no reason to suppose these people were hostile. In fact, you risked incurring unnecessary hostility by being caught trespassing and spying on them. We now know you had no ill intent arriving on the planet, no knowledge of the witches coming in. You did not, in fact, come here expecting to meet or to fight them. Even though episode 3 told us they are only here because they were hunted to the brink of extinction and driven out of Republic space, but fuck it, never mind. That's too interesting to come up again. The reason is, of course, that the show really wants the tragedy of miscommunication and misinterpretation to be the theme of this episode. To be as kind as I possibly can be, there are a couple of instances across the episode that are competent in service of that goal. We've just had one of them. In episode 3, we saw the full training session, with Mother Anus Eye cheerfully ignoring her misbehaving girls while she delivered a vague lesson about the thread for the benefit of the audience. She then fairly playfully surprised them out of their squabbling.
Your enemies will not warn you before they attack.
But Squid Game does not see the lead up. He only sees the last bit, which from his perspective looks like cruelty in combat training. In isolation, this is not a bad device, but because the show recognizes it's not a bad device, it chooses to repeat it far less subtly later, such as when Fannie Mae goes for her test and tells the Jedi that she's going to be sacrificed at the Ascension ceremony.
Mama said, everyone must walk through fear. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny.
Now this, obviously, from our position of foreknowledge, is a child's inept retelling of this scene from episode 3.
Ascension is about walking through fear. It is about sacrificing a part of yourself, the power of many, instead of the power of one.
That Squid Game will take this as more evidence that the children are in danger is just kind of comical, really, but the reason it's comical also undercuts the otherwise serviceable first example. In order to come away with a powerful misapprehension of the witch's true intent, believing that they intend to harm the only 2 children they have, Squid Game has to have jizz for brains. I have seen people online saying that the Jedi did nothing wrong in this episode, but that the episode nevertheless intends to portray them as evil. I do not believe either of these statements to be true. The episode wants to convey the Jedi as making a profound mistake born of their noble intentions. Hell, it even smashes us in the face with this wondrously subtle bit of foreshadowing.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
That is not a bid to portray the Jedi as evil, it's a bid to portray them as stumbling into disaster with the best intentions. We'll treat with the specifics of this later, but that is what the episode is trying to convey, and it's what it mostly does convey. Which means that no, the Jedi aren't evil, but nor do they do nothing wrong. In fact, they do a lot wrong because the episode basically proceeds like they are all suffering from acute oxygen deprivation. And no, Squid Game sneaking around spying on lesbian space witches rather than peacefully introducing himself like a proper Jedi would, does not count as the most retarded action anyone will take in this episode. It's just the plot necessary retardation to kick off the rest of the retardation, the tragedy of misinterpretation. Squid Game then manages to climb all the way out of the vagina off screen, and he rejoins his team later that night.
A force cult here.
I think they are witches.
Night Sisters.
We do not have all the information. Besides, Night Sisters don't raise younglings, let alone train them.
A momentary outbreak of good sense on Trinity's part there, though in point of fact I'm pretty sure she's wrong about the Night Sisters. This excerpt is from the canon Night Sisters entry on Wikipedia, meaning it will be true for at least the time it takes me to read it. As young initiates, Night Sister witches undergo training as children to master their power over magic. Young women aspiring to join the ranks of the Night Sisters first had to use the dark side to subdue a powerful, strong-willed creature living in the depths of the pools in the village known as the Sleeper and bring back a part of its body. The harvested remains would then be converted into the Water of Life, a major component of Night Sister magics. Any initiate who gave into their fear, such as Talia's twin sister, would be dragged down into the depths and killed. An important component of training was that a Night Sister had to master their power without losing control and giving in to the dark side completely. So that sounds an awful lot to me like they're training your version of younglings, Trinity. Fuck, where does the show think new Night Sisters come from if they don't have or train children? Do the Jedi just think Night Sisters spring out of holes in the ground? And of course, that'd be ridiculous.
We should return to the ship, ask the Council for guidance.
I fear for the girls' safety. The witches prepare for a ceremony tonight. What if the girls are in danger?
What if you're jumping to crazy conclusions based on what any sane person would recognize as incomplete information, Squid Game? Aren't you supposed to be a Jedi Master? Oh, that's, yeah, keep that in mind. 16 years hence, everyone involved in this catastrophe is a Jedi Master in good standing. Now, yes, obviously they're going to orchestrate some awful cover-up in the interim, but it's a question of temperament, you see. The only one of these 4 who acts in a manner befitting of a Jedi Master at any point in this episode is Trinity, and even then she only does it occasionally. Kilnaka proves himself vulnerable to mind rape, Squid Game is hot-headed and impulsive and leads them all to disaster, and Tommen kills himself the minute he's given an opportunity to do so by the script. None of these traits should allow them to pass the trials, for fuck's sake. Here's a wild, crazy idea. Wild and crazy by the show's standards, so sensible by anybody else's. How about you inform the council you found divergence and suggest they send backup? While you're waiting, you can go and politely introduce yourself to the witches. You know, in the way Qui-Gon navigated Tatooine's local customs in order to secure hyperdrive parts and an annoying child, rather than just going in, murdering Watto and burning his shop down. In the way Obi-Wan went and made inquiries of the Kaminoans like a rational adult, rather than storming in, cutting them all down and setting fire to the cloning facilities. In the way that Luke attempted to reason with Jabba, rather than bursting in and chopping heads left, right and center. How about, in short, you deal with them like a Jedi would?
You would defer to the council, but I insist. Come with me, see what I have seen.
Have you not considered knocking? Honestly, you can't really blame the witches for thinking you're up to no good. You've just hacked your way into their vagina unasked.
It's an old platform elevator. This must be an old mining site.
Well, that's an answer, I suppose. I was wondering in episode 3 where the giant vagina fortress came from, who built it, who lived there. As for it being an old mining site, didn't we kick off this episode learning that the great hyperspace disaster had wiped out all life on Brendok? Fort Vagina seems in remarkably good nick, all things considered. I'd have been nifty had it been shown mining cortosis, since that would give us a lead on Smilo Ren's origin, but we get no new information about him in this episode, so never mind.
I'm going in alone.
Master, we must escort you.
It's too risky to go in as a group. They'll take it as a threat.
There are over 50 of them.
50 women and only 2 children.
We should go as a team.
Fine, but we must be vigilant.
No, hacking your way into their fortress would be considered a threat. If you're happy to announce yourselves to them, if you're happy to make contact with them, if you don't want to come across as a threat, then knock on the fucking door, you clowns! In through the door they go, and then we basically just repeat their introductory scene from episode 3.
Good evening. I'm Master Indara. These are my colleagues Sol, Kelnaka, and my Padawan Torben. I am Anastasia, mother of this coven. These women are under my protection. You are trespassing.
The intent here is, of course, to bring our new context in through that door with us. What in episode 3 sounded like a complete flat-out lie on Trinity's part,
Forgive our intrusion. We thought this planet was uninhabited.
Is now supposed to be read as truth, but with the audience understanding that the witches believe it to be a lie. That, after all, is the theme of this episode, the toxic marriage of full ideals with partial information leading to unnecessary hostility. I do want to be fair to the show. This basic premise, mutually unreliable narrators, the audience seeing the tragedy by experiencing both halves of the truth, seeing where the miscommunication arises from, seeing how avoidable it all is, that's all quite good. It's imaginative. It's a more complex narrative structure and goal than we usually get from Disney Star Wars, and unusually for the Acolyte, it is a concerted attempt to show rather than tell in some long, tedious expository scene. But it's completely undermined by what is usual from the Acolyte, absolute stupidity on the part of both writers and their characters, because the former are completely incapable of pulling this off without wrapping the umbilical cord around the necks of the latter and Rovi wading the fuck out of them. Trinity's line here is a case in point. It seemed entirely unbelievable in episode 3, because it seemed entirely unbelievable that the Jedi would have hacked their way into a very obviously inhabited fortress that they'd very obviously have spotted long before getting to it. From the witch's perspective, it is supposed to seem like a very obvious lie, hence Mother Anasai's episode 3 retort,
The all-knowing Jedi were ignorant of their surroundings. I find that hard to believe.
But it only seems like a very obvious lie because Trinity was very obviously stupid to phrase it in this way to begin with, and the additional information we now have from the Jedi's perspective does nothing to change that. Yes, you thought the planet was uninhabited, but you never thought the fortress was uninhabited, and you hacked your way in here knowing that it wasn't. Trinity has to be dumb in order for the witches to misinterpret her intentions in this scene. I return once more to the point and purpose of the Jedi. They are diplomats. They are peacekeepers. They are sent to arbitrate disputes. They are trained to be tactful and sensitive to the needs of others. If your diplomat-in-chief blunders into a press conference, has a senior moment and accidentally declares war on a country because they're barely capable of speaking English anymore, please ignore the footage on the screen, I have no idea why it's there, then they are supremely unqualified to hold such an important position, and it should be of universal concern that they rose this far through the ranks to begin with. I stress, this episode, this entire show, has has deliberately avoided mounting any thought-out or ideological examination of the Jedi and their philosophy, never mind a critique of it. It's chosen, instead, to root its tragedy in innocent mistakes and accidents, but that's worse than the alternative, because it means the tacit criticism of the Jedi is that they are just fucking stupid, while the tacit criticism of the witches is basically the same thing. Episode 3 vaguely flirted with the idea these witches had been driven to the brink of extinction.
We were hunted, persecuted, forced into hiding, all because some would consider our power dark, unnatural.
That is all we get to substantiate their paranoiac distrust of the Jedi standing before them. But because the show flatly refused to tell us anything at all about the who, the why, and the when of it, it denied itself the chance to give the witches a defined motive. It seemed like the logical entailment of that snippet of backstory, hunted to the brink of extinction, driven out of the Republic, well, that might lead you to believe the Jedi were at least happy for this persecution to take place, if not directly involved in it themselves. But this episode completely aborts that potential storyline by having the Jedi turn up innocently, ignorant of the witches and of their culture, and merely concerned about the fate of the twins based upon information they should know is laughably incomplete. In other words, the Jedi have no preconceived hatred of the witches, which counteracts any impression the show might have given that the Jedi were culpable for the witches' near elimination. If by contrast the show had committed to the Jedi's historical involvement in the persecution of Force cults like these, and this cult in particular, then, even if it were ancient history, we'd have a powerful reason for this mutual distrust, an ancient animosity that justifies the presumption of ill intent and which would more than explain why both groups immediately jumped to the least charitable interpretation of the other's motives. The show lacks the courage of its convictions. At least the prequels foregrounded the Jedi Order's arrogance and supercilious rigidity as causes for their decline, refusing to see the truth until it's too late, being too sure of their position until it's too late, their petty mistreatment of Anakin driving him into Palpatine's arms, etc. The Acolyte, by contrast, pretends that it wants to give us an unvarnished and unflattering look at the truths of power and politics, revealing the darker side of the Jedi, but when the time comes to finally bring that to a head, no, it has nothing to say. There's nothing especially wrong with the Jedi, it's just the generic tragedy that led to this conflict, a tragedy that ends up affirming the Jedi's claims to goodness by emphasizing their noble intentions. Oh, how sad that things happened to play out the way they did, as opposed to, wow, they played out the way they did because the Jedi are actually kind of dicks. The witches mount no critique, and they represent no critique. In fact, as we shall very shortly see, their actions pretty much force the Jedi's hand in a way that makes the Jedi seem entirely justified in what follows, absent the stupidity that gets us there. If you actually wanted a sincere exploration of points of view, a look at the Jedi from a different perspective, then The Acolyte is not the show for you, for all it might pretend that all these things. Speaking of the witches forcing their hand, remember that bit in episode 3 where Mother Anus Eye mind-fucked Tommen? Seemed pretty evil, didn't it? Well, how about we redeem her by turning her into even more evil Bad Galadriel?
Torben, Jedi Padawan, son of paupers from the planet Bonadon. You've traveled so far only to become trapped on this planet. You are a strong and good Jedi. You are a strong and good Jedi. But you have natural desires you suppress.
Tonight, you will sleep. Welcome, Frodo of the Shire. One who has seen the eye.
Gee, I wonder where this could be going. She can't appeal to his character or his motives because Tommen doesn't have those. What's the anus idea, Anus Eye?
You've traveled so far only to become trapped on this planet. You are a strong and good Jedi. You are a strong and good Jedi. But you have natural desires you suppress.
Why, yes. Yes, he does. He saw Smiler Ren's meaty lightsaber and he just wants to get his hand around that strong, thick shaft and—
Tell me, do you wish to escape this planet? Do you wish to escape this planet? Do you wish to escape this planet?
Oh, never mind, he's just bored of picking shrubs. What a terrific character. A couple of days after this episode aired, the For You tab on Twitter, which as best I can work out is Elon Musk's attempt to make its users even more served me up a whole slew of— oh wait, no, can we still say— served me up a whole slew of— oh wait, can we still say— served me up a whole slew of mentally— oh wait, can we still say mentally— served me up a whole slew of gifted people who posted entire threads extolling the representational wonders of Tommen's character arc in this show. Finally, so went the thrust of these posts, we get an accurate representation of neurodiversity in Star Wars. And no, they weren't referring to how fucking the show is generally. The general format was, I'm mentally ill and I find Torben's decision to kill himself a really accurate and profound bit of character writing, because here is my autobiography and all of my many comorbidities. Being a gifted person myself, I have a degree of sympathy for these people, but they're indicative of the show's faults and not of its merits. Because Tommen's arc seems so drastic, young Padawan here kills himself a few years later, it feels like there should be some very deep and serious reasoning behind his actions. But because there actually isn't some very deep and serious reason behind his actions, he really is just bored of picking shrubs and he wants to go home for no established reason, those desperate to connect with something familiar are reduced to projecting onto the blank slate that is his character. Gifted people on Twitter who suffer crippling anxiety projected anxiety onto his character. Gifted people on Twitter who suffer crippling depression projected depression. Gifted people who are really repressed furries projected their filthy, disgusting degeneracy onto him probably. The Acolyte has inadvertently accomplished the character writing equivalent of cold reading. Tommen exists, Tommen does this thing later, but all the actual business of writing and connecting the dots, no, that's left to the desperate audience. It is worth stressing that that is one of the biggest tasks this episode had to complete. Substantiate Tommen's suicide from episode 2. Show what happened that was so psychologically shocking that he went into silent meditation for a decade and then yeeted himself from this mortal coil at the first opportunity. We'll just park the fact that he somehow completed the trials and became a master in the 6 years following this episode, and nobody ever thought there was anything wrong with him, because there's nothing the show can do to fix that problem because it hasn't considered that problem. At this point, it's not spoiling anything to say that the show laughably fails at this task. It really is as vacuous as, I'm bored of picking flowers, I miss Coruscant, I want to go home, which makes the following even funnier, and it's already quite funny.
Your master denies you. I would not keep you from what you want. I would always let you have what you need.
But he doesn't need anything. There's nothing you can give to him. Stop trying to make this sexual. He's not gay for black women. He's just bored of picking shrubs.
Why not ask me? Go on. Go on. Go on. Ask me. Ask me.
He's fucking crying. I fantasize about being sexually dominated by a strong black lesbian with a bird's nest on her head.
I want to return to Coruscant.
Why? Why? Oh, Tommen, I can read your mind, you dirty boy. I can give you everything you ask for. I will never deny you. I'll grant you your deepest, darkest desires. Ask me, ask me, ask me. I want to go back to Coruscant for no adequately explained reason. Oh, that's... I thought you were gonna tell me you were into pegging or something. This is another of those cases where it feels like an entire episode is missing. It was the same with the Jecki Occupational Safety and Health Administration love arc between episodes 2 and 4. You know, where they have one conversation in episode 2, and then episode 3 is a flashback, and then episode 4 picks up with them being best buds who give each other sex eyes or something. Tommen's torment, and the way Mother Aenus Eye basically flirts with him, suggests a guy who's got issues around, well, sex, love. Maybe it's just love. Maybe he's in an illicit relationship with somebody on Coruscant whom he wants to get back to. But on script review, they were told they really had to trim the show down to 8 episodes, and so the supporting work was jettisoned, and Tommen's motive switched to vague homesickness, which he contracted after just a few weeks of being a horticulturalist, because nobody told him what it was all for, and this means he is absolutely likely to turn to the dark side, I guess. This really shouldn't need saying. But if you are going to hinge one of the most pivotal moments in your show on a character's decision, it really, really needs to be a motivated decision, and you really, really need him to be an actual character. Hell, why not have Mother Aenus Eye, who is reading as well as raping his mind in this scene, remember, tell us why Tommen wants to go back to Coruscant. Tommen Baratheon, your master would deny you pleasure, love, life itself. I know what you've left behind on Coruscant. I know who you've left behind on Coruscant. I can give you them. Funnily enough, given Mother Aenus Eye is being bad Galadriel here, that scene in Fellowship is instructive. Galadriel tests each member of the Fellowship upon their arrival in Lothlorien. In the case of Boromir, she tests him with what he desires, to keep his city and his people safe. She tests him in order to gauge his resistance to temptation, a test that he fails. But it tells us a lot about Boromir's character and understand his motives, such that no one who reads the book or watches the film doubts that he is a noble guy who is corrupted by the ring. We have essentially the same setup here, and we know nothing about Tommen going in save that he is very bored and he wants to go home. And he is, per Squid Game's hasty exposition earlier, unbalanced for some reason. But I guess the writers couldn't be bothered coming up with anything more than that, so even though Mother Anus Eye is inside his mind, we come away from this scene knowing nothing about Tommen, save that he is very bored, he wants to go home, and he is unbalanced for some reason.
Kneel. If you want your Padawan returned to his right mind, I suggest you all leave. Now.
Dick move, Mother Anus Eye. Dick move. You could forgive the Jedi for thinking you're a bunch of flat-out evil witch cultists using the dark side to sacrifice children, and it's just such a fucking weird decision when you consider that Mother Anus Eye's next move is basically to play the nice, decent, compromising sort. She asks Occupational Safety and Health Administration what she wants to do. She's willing to let her leave with the Jedi. Essentially, she's doing this evil magic now because the show needs the Jedi to get the wrong impression, and then she's going to flip her character in a few minutes' time because the show needs us to think that killing all of the witches is regrettable. But you have another character standing right next to Anus Eye who consistently hates the Jedi and wants to fight them off. Why? It's horny lesbian. Her actions later are as reckless and impulsive as anything the Jedi do. You mind-raping Tommen in front of the Jedi is a reckless and impulsive thing to do. So why not have horny lesbian do it? Have her mind-rape Tommen and have Mother Anus Eye command her to stop. At least that way these characters would act with some degree of consistency. The next few minutes are shot for shot, angle for angle, a repeat of episode 3. We don't even try to save time by returning to the inside of Tommen's head, where we've established that time flows differently. No, we absolutely had to replay the exchange between Trinity and Anus Eye in full. It's not like we're halfway through the penultimate episode of the show or anything. It's not like each episode costs more than a gold-plated bidet, though I fully encourage you to go French and shit on it anyway. Nah, we've definitely got time to replay entire scenes from a previous episode that tell us nothing new. Top work, Leslie. Now you might think that the Jedi's first order of business on returning to the ship would be to thoroughly debrief Tommen. What the hell happened to you? Are you okay? Did you learn anything? What manner of magic did they use? What did it feel like to be raped? Mind probed by a witch. Oh, they manipulated you because you're mildly bored and you want to go home? And that was enough to get you flirting with the dark side? Literally? You're a shit Padawan, Tommen. Fuck, I wish they'd given me Joffrey instead. You're useless, Tommen. Useless. You might further think they'd be running medical checks on him to ensure he hasn't caught some sort of brain AIDS. And having done that and figured Tommen is easily manipulable by witchy mind magic, you would definitely expect them to be keeping him confined to the ship for the remainder of this mission. But no, none of that. We rejoin them and Trinity's just standing there silently as Tommen just sits there silently, and then Trinity and Squid Game return to the obviously much more important than my Padawan task of testing the two twins. Even if we assume some sort of debrief happened off-screen, while we were busy repeating the shitty scene from episode 3 for no reason, this very serious event barely comes up again. It doesn't alter their plans, it doesn't alter their impression of Tommen, it doesn't change anything they do. Tommen is still free to wander around, still allowed off the ship, so obviously, things will go very wrong again in just a few minutes' time because, well, fuck, why wouldn't they? But this means that once again the Jedi are portrayed as dumb and unresponsive to events. Hell, you'd think they'd instantly have informed the Council about all of this. There's a Force cult, they're channeling what looks very much like the dark side, and they're training children. Either the Council should recall them, because this planet isn't in Republic space anyway, and so it's not their business, or the Council should send backup. And given the show has repeatedly demonstrated that hyperspace travel takes no time at all, the backup should already be here.
That was clever, suggesting we test the girls. Buys me time to ask the Council for guidance.
Why haven't you already done that, you plank?
I feel a connection to Osha.
Testing the twins is not something we can take seriously. Osha's too old to join the Order.
I feel she's meant to be my Padawan.
Isn't it so terribly convenient how you can just summon motivations with a half-second's notice? It's all the will of the Force, I bet. Now Squid Game is passionately committed to taking Occupational Safety and Health Administration specifically as his Padawan, which is going to be important in a later decision. In an interview, Leslie has attempted to explain this sudden appearance of character motive by reference to the Phantom Menace, specifically the way Qui-Gon is drawn toward Anakin. Question: why does Sol feel a connection to Occupational Safety and Health Administration information so immediately? And specifically, why does he feel like she's meant to be his Padawan? Leslie. I wanted to keep some mystery around that. I wanted to definitely call back to Qui-Gon and Anakin. Qui-Gon almost immediately zeroes in on the potential that Anakin has, the specialness of the Jedi, the exceptionalism of Anakin. I think Sol feels the same way about Osha. There's just something that he feels within his connection with the Force, strength in the Force, and how he recognizes that. And I always okay, fuck that. I'm tired of Leslie. Normal voices now. And I always wondered, having seen The Phantom Menace and seeing Qui-Gon behave the way he did, I did wonder, is this how it happened? Or do you just get matched up with somebody? And a much more compelling, interesting storyline is, as a Jedi Knight moving into Master, you identify your apprentice in a deep spiritual connection, whether it's out in the world or at the temple, as opposed to being paired up with someone. That's fine-ish. It is sort of treading on the whole Virgins idea, though, isn't it? The idea that there is something special about the twins, if this is just the normal way that Jedi Knights pick their Padawans. It does, though, call back to Smilo's line in Episode 6.
His strength in the Force is very powerful.
You think that his strength, that's your strength in the Force, Osha. Someone ought to teach you that.
Though that is still an incredibly clunky expression of the idea, and I rewrote it in the last video in a way that, we now know, would have set up this moment in Episode 7 much more satisfyingly. Get that the show wants this all to be very intriguing, but you can be intriguing without lapsing into obscurantism and pointless guff. Strong in the Force? I'm sure he is, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, but tell me, what did he sense? What about you caught his attention? Of all the people in the galaxy, the Force called out to you. Why do you think that is? That interview, by the way, with Nerdist and Leslie Headland gets curious, because Headland is given time and space to explore her ideas, and apparently she doesn't give too much of a shit about spoilers. We have, for example, been pondering how Smilo would be connected to the witches, because, you know, it's normal, it's expected that your principal antagonist has a motive that's built up across the story, and instigated at some point along the A-plot. This is what Leslie had to say. Leslie. Oh, I can answer that. They do not know each other. But what I will say, as a tease, if we are able to explore this story more, her species, that is horny lesbian species, will tell you a little bit about where she ends up. So, no? Unless she's lying, and I fucking hope she is lying, my god, the show's main antagonist has nothing to do with the show's main plot and backstory. He's just there, getting his dick out, being a dick, dropping lines like, the power of two.
What do you want?
The power of two.
Which is a nice thing to begin with, even though he has absolutely no connection to the witches who birthed the expression? Right. Not sure I'm buying that, Leslie. Not sure I'm buying that at all. I think that would be a complete waste of time. So actually, yeah, it's probably true, isn't it? I have been trying to talk myself down from the idea that one of the mothers is behind Smilo because it has some kind of dramatic narrative sense to it, because it would be slightly satisfying. It's the same thing that led me to drop the idea that one of the mothers was Smilo to begin with. No, I think Leslie's right. Yeah, the villain is gonna have nothing to do with the main story. Fantastic. So glad we spent so long trying to work this out, so long watching the show, so long breaking the show down. It's been totally worth it. Headland also expands on the twins' origin story and their possible connection to Anakin, which was a touchy subject back when the prospect was first mooted in Episode 3. Her answers are confused. She insists, for instance, that the Virgins is not in the twins. The Virgins is rather a natural feature of Brendok. And yet, at the same time, the twins are an early experiment in creating a Virgins. This excerpt is a long one, but I think it's worth quoting in full. Leslie, the girls are guinea pigs. They are patient zero for this sort of power. It didn't work perfectly. Therefore, the girls on their own can never be as powerful as Anakin. Their full potential together has yet to be explored. They've been separated too long. It's like when you're doing an experiment and it's the first round of it. They are maybe not the first, but one of the first experiments of this particular use of power. So the twins are weaker than Anakin for sure. They're going to fall short of what will eventually become the Chosen One. They will never achieve what that is, because in my mind, Anisea could only do so much. She's not powerful enough to create one person. The twins split, Anisea's power split, and therefore a lot of her philosophy is about the power of two, about the fact that they must stay together. They must stay together. The twins are stronger together if she keeps them together. And obviously there's an analogy to this of the isolationist feeling, not just of the coven, but also of family. If I can keep you safe, then you won't get hurt, you won't get hurt. This is why the Jedi blowing up this dynamic, both in episode 3 and 7, is so important to see, because Anisea starts to essentially go into this crisis as a parent. Of course, I know they need to stay together, but they also need to be their own person, so perhaps I need to let go of my own design and trust that this is what's meant to be, because what's the better option? That I force my children to be what they're not? End quote. That is worth quoting alongside one later answer from the same interview. When asked whether she's plotted out an entire story, from this show all the way up through Darth Plagueis training Palpatine into the prequels, Edlund said, and again I quote, "Yes, I do. If I continue to get to tell this story, I know how I would like that to play out, and I would say I think it's pretty complicated and messy." Now I think all of that is worth quoting because it's all more interesting than the Acolyte, and it potentially reveals the direction Disney canon is trending in. As it stands, in current canon and even in Legends, it's not confirmed that Plagueis made Anakin, at least as far as I understand it. It's implied he might have done in Legends, but there's no confirmation. There is also the alternate theory that Anakin was created by the will of the Force and conceived by the midichlorians themselves, and the Jedi's prophecy is vague enough that either interpretation could hold. But if we do a little bit of dot joining, we get the following sense from Leslie, and given her supposedly frequent chats with Dave Filoni and Pablo Hidalgo, the unholy trifecta of shit, it's not far-fetched to suppose that this is their thinking as well. Anakin is a kind of Frankenstein's monster. The power to create a vergence in a living being is essentially a mechanical one, and plenty of people have tried and are trying to do it for their own purposes, including the witches. Edlund describes the twins as guinea pigs, as patient zero, saying it didn't work perfectly, which rather implies that with Anakin it did work perfectly, albeit with a brief interregnum in which he murdered a lot of children and blew up some planets and such. That's just a minor hiccup though, it's new technology, there's always the odd bug to sort out. Edlund confuses herself in answering why the twins can't be as powerful as Anakin, presumably knowing that making them as powerful as Anakin would piss a few people off and break some stuff. Her explanation is that, well, individually they are not as powerful because the experiment split its results in two. My theory, by the way, that this is because they couldn't contain both light and dark side of the Force in one person. Yeah, I'm still running with that. I still think that's what the twins are. But given Leslie goes on to say that they're more powerful together, at their most powerful together in fact, and that's before even getting to the power of many, doesn't the same problem present itself? If the Jedi hadn't turned up on Brendok and contrived by stupidity to blow up the Witch's Coven, wouldn't the twins growing up together have been together as powerful as Anakin? What then is so special about the Chosen One? Is it really just a question of numbers? He's the Chosen One rather than the power of two? But given a line, a thread if you will, seems to have been drawn between the twins and Plagueis and Anakin, I would not be at all surprised if the operating assumption between Edlund, Filoni and Hidalgo is that Plagueis did indeed create Anakin. The question, I suppose, is whether Disney goes bankrupt before it gets to fuck around with that part of the story.
Sometime later.
I guess we'll wait and see. For now, back to crap.
They marked her sister with dark magic.
Ceremonial markings are customary in many cultures in the galaxy.
But Osha did not have one. I worry she's not safe.
That's true. She may have resisted being marked. There's no way to know.
You could ask them. You could read Occupational Safety and Health Administration's mind. Remember how that's a thing you can do? You did it to an adult Fannie Mae in episode 2. If Fannie Mae's got the lesbo tattoo and she's still alive and well, what reason is there to suppose that Occupational Safety and Health Administration would be any different? And hell, you guys saw that you interrupted them in the middle of their ceremony. Why would you assume that she resisted rather than that they didn't have time to complete it because you stormed in having hacked their platform? Why are you all so fucking dumb and reaching for these incredibly implausible conclusions, Jedi?
Then who is protecting this child if not the Jedi? I believe she wants to live with us.
Do not confuse what Osha wants with what you want.
But Occupational Safety and Health Administration said in episode 3 she wanted to take the test.
Mama, I want to show them what you taught me. Please let me take the test.
You were there when she said it, Trinity. I don't know why I'm the one remembering these things when you were in the fucking scene. We pick up the next day with Tommen outside meditating. We're still not doing it, are we? We're not going to address the mind rape. No. Fine, never mind. Having seen Occupational Safety and Health Administration get tested in episode 3, this time we see Fanny Mae get tested by the Jedi, because truth is a point of view, Anakin, or something. Look at Fanny there, emasculating Tommen with her gaze. My mum mind raped you and had you on your knees, lol.
In this test, you must divine what images appear on the testing screen.
What do you want me to do?
She was telling you what she wants you to do, you little shit. Fuck, why not have Squid Game start off by being friendly, asking Fanny Mae how she's feeling, and then have Fanny Mae interrupt him, having her say, "What do you want me to do?" after Trinity has basically finished telling her what she wants her to do is just pure clunk, Leslie. It's clunk.
What you see?
A spaceship.
You could just say you see nothing, but whatever.
Last night before we entered your home, what was everyone doing in the courtyard?
Ascension.
What is that? Is your marking a part of Ascension? Do you like it? It's very beautiful. Ascension must be very important to include a marking like that.
Mama says Ascension means Osha and I will lead the coven. That's why I have a marking like Mama.
But your children, how can you become the leaders?
I don't know. Mama said everyone must walk through fear. Everyone must be sacrificed to fulfill their destiny.
Waco, we're doing Waco, Space Waco. Quick, witches, run away! Run away before the Bureau of Jawa-juiced death sticks and blasters hits you with 1,000 rounds of law and order. We know that this is May misremembering the line from Mother Anus Eye in episode 3.
It is about sacrificing a part of yourself.
Everybody must be sacrificed versus everyone must sacrifice a part of themselves. The Jedi do not know that. Look at them there, being all alarmed. The problem is that they should at least suspect that this is a child making a mistake. In the first place, we've established that, actually no, wait, fuck it. In the only place that matters, they should just read her mind. But parking that, because we just don't do that anymore, I guess. In the first place, they know she lied her way all through the test, so she's not a reliable narrator. In the second place, she just finished telling them how she and Occupational Safety and Health Administration were going through the Ascension ceremony so they could lead the coven. Unless the Jedi are reaching and speculate that by lead the coven she means lead the coven to mass suicide, Heaven's Gate style, then the Jedi should spot the discrepancy and be mindful of not leaping to the worst possible interpretation of her words. But again, the episode only knows how to service its theme by making everyone dumb as fuck, so dumb as fuck they must be. Of course, if they were really concerned that the children were about to be sacrificed, and judging by their expressions, both Trinity and Squid Game have this concern, then you're fine, because both the twins are here on your ship. Keep them in your custody, hold them until you ascertain the truth, or fly off with them and ask questions later. If you seriously suspect these people are about to go all Jonestown, you wouldn't be sending the kids back into the cult while you wait for guidance from the council, would you? Protect first, ask questions later. Anyway, we just kind of forget about the suspicion for a moment because we have another child to test first.
May was instructed to fail. I would like to try a different approach with the other child.
You may.
Remember that. Remember Trinity consenting to this. She's going to forget she did that in just a few minutes' time. So, we replay Occupational Safety and Health Administration's test from episode 3, with particular emphasis being placed on Squid Game telling Occupational Safety and Health Administration that she must have the courage to tell the truth.
But you must have the courage to say what you want.
Trinity seems unhappy at this approach, and this is to flesh out her later complaint that Squid Game coached Occupational Safety and Health Administration to pass the test.
But Osha passed.
After you coached her, do not alter this little girl's destiny because you have formed an emotional attachment to her.
That is not what's happening here.
Even though Trinity just got done giving permission for him to try it, and even though the only thing Squid Game really did differently was encouraging her not to lie and to take the test properly. I'm not sure that really counts as coaching. After both girls have left the ship, Trinity tells Tommen to analyze their blood samples and says she's contacted the council and is awaiting instruction. Because in this episode, people can't communicate instantly through holomessage, even though they could in all the other episodes, even from the Outer Rim. And the blood test computer withholds its results until the most dramatically satisfying moment, even though in The Phantom Menace it runs pretty well instantly.
I need a midichlorian count.
The reading is off the chart.
But hell, at least the computer's got a mind for drama. No one else in the show does.
I've contacted council for instruction.
And then?
You, Sol, and Kalnaka continue the field work.
I'll wait here until Coruscant makes contact with us.
So you didn't debrief him? You didn't talk to him about any of this? Your apprentice just got mind raped by a witch because he's so bored of this field work he was prepared to be literally seduced by the dark side. He might be a lesbian now for all you know, and your response is get back to your field work? Some master you are. Outside in the camp, where I guess they live because their spaceship cabins cost $6,000 a night and are shit, Squid Game is pacing anxiously waiting for Trinity, who is waiting for the Council's response that they haven't already sent for some reason. Finally, it arrives, and it is bad news.
The Council said no. They will not sanction bringing the twins to Coruscant or separating them from their coven.
It is impossible to know whether this is fine because we have absolutely no idea what Trinity told the Council because we were too busy reusing footage from episode 3. If we'd swapped one of those repeated scenes for Trinity messaging the Council, then in one go we'd have established whether Trinity and Tommen had spoken, and if so about what, we'd establish Trinity's own opinion on matters, and we'd be able to judge the Council's response. We've seen Trinity looking worried. If we saw her in private communication with the Council, show that she shares Squid Game's concerns feelingly, that she is genuinely worried about the witches and scared for the girls, and her outward stoicism is just the public face she's put on to reassure her comrades, then this scene, where she dispassionately relays the Council's verdict, would tell us an awful lot about her character. It would tell us that this is a woman with almost motherly instincts, whose training has taught her to suppress them where the need arises. In other words, to be a Jedi, she must let go of what she fears to lose. We'd be foregrounding the conflict between family and duty that Leslie wants to be the theme of the episode. It really does grate your balls watching the show completely skipping over obvious and easy character beats because it shows how much better the Acolyte could have been with just a minute's thought applied to it. Absent those, we learn nothing, we feel for no one, and we can't really understand anyone's decisions or frustrations because we have no idea who they are, and so what determines those decisions or causes those frustrations. Every one of these characters is as empty as Marok from the Ahsoka show, outwardly present but scratch the skin and you get sprayed in the face with concentrated fart. And we might be coming back to concentrated fart later in the episode, which is me saying that we are definitely coming back to concentrated fart later in the episode.
But there's something dangerous about those women.
Boy, what an incredibly useful line that is.
But there's something dangerous about those women.
But there's something dangerous about those women. But there's something dangerous about those women.
Look at this motor car. A beauty, isn't it? It's got 20 years happy motoring ahead of it. Or has it? Here comes a woman. Women, for pity's sake, don't drive.
You can feel the twins are not safe.
They say that we have interfered too much already.
Will they let us come home at least?
No.
So now we've just entered the realm of bullshit, haven't we? We sent you to this planet to investigate a Force Virgins. You've pretty much found this Force Virgins, and a cult of probably dark side users training some very special children who may or may not be imminently sacrificed to the great god Clit Oris, or whatever the fuck. What do you advise we do now, Council? Well, we think you've done too much investigating already. We don't want you interfering any further in any of this, even though we sent you there for that reason. Okay, so can we come home?
No.
So you sent us to investigate, and we investigated, and we found something important, and now you've told us we've done too much interfering and investigating, so we're to stop, but we can't come home for some reason.
Well, what is it you want? We want a shrubbery!
I want to do what's best for Osha.
You don't get to decide that.
Once again, we really need to know what Trinity told the Council. Did she tell them she feared the girls are in danger, that they might be about to be sacrificed? Or did she just tell them she'd found Force-sensitive twins and forget they might be about to be sacrificed? What is this Jedi Prime Directive nonsense? Qui-Gon didn't contact the Council for permission to take Anakin. He took Anakin and then asked permission to train him. And Qui-Gon didn't think Watto was about to sacrifice Anakin to witch gods. The show's plot is actively undermining itself here. If we want to portray Squid Game seemingly losing perspective and trying to steal children from innocent people, that's one thing. But if we want to have the Jedi intervening having misunderstood what they perceive as evil and dangerous in the witch cult, that's another thing. Having both in play doesn't really work. The show wants Trinity to be the level-headed, sane and sensible one, with those around her making mistakes that force the tragic turn. But if Trinity believes these girls are in genuine danger, which the show did imply she does, then she's not the sane and sensible one, and Squid Game is probably right, based on what information they have, to act. All of this could have been avoided, of course, had the Jedi not been so stupid in a bid to contrive events, or if they'd remembered they can read fucking minds. Anyway, Tommen's Nintendo Switch chooses this moment to finish running the blood tests.
The M count is very high, extremely high.
The reading is off the chart. Over 20,000.
Very force sensitive. Their symbionts are the same.
They are twins?
No, exactly the same. Even identical twins would have different symbionts.
Not for nothing, but you're speaking to Jedi Knights here, Tommen. You don't have to clarify that a high M count means the twins are very force-sensitive, Tommen. They already know what that means. Is it even worth interrogating the symbiont point? Obviously, post-prequels, we've got midichlorians in the blood. And this relationship, midichlorians benefiting by living in human cells, humans benefiting from having midichlorians living in their cells because they give them access to the Force, is a symbiotic relationship. Listen, here's Qui-Gon explaining it to some annoying child.
They live inside me.
Inside yourselves, yes. And we are symbionts with them.
Symbionts?
Life forms living together for mutual advantage.
Either I'm misunderstanding this, or the Acolyte is misunderstanding this. And while it's very possible I'm misunderstanding it because midichlorians annoy me, I think it's more likely that the Acolyte is misunderstanding it because it's written by idiots. Symbionts are not some third party in a symbiotic relationship. The parties to a symbiotic relationship are the symbionts. In the symbiotic relationship between the twins and the midichlorians, the twins are symbionts and the midichlorians are symbionts. The line, their symbionts are the same, doesn't really work, in that the twins don't have symbionts to measure, they are the symbionts. Saying their symbionts are the same is saying the twins are the same.
Sometime later.
You are not twins. You and the ocean are the same person.
From a certain point of view.
Oh, great.
They're not even identical. Fuck it, doesn't really matter. In the first draft of the script, it's one of those lines that gets the placeholder science bullshit. Premise A, science bullshit. Conclusion B, plot progresses.
The twins were artificially created? Maybe by tapping into a power dense enough to split one consciousness into two bodies? Only a virgin could create that type of power.
So yeah, science bullshit. Their symbionts are the same is the explanation in lieu, the thing that lets the Jedi conclude a vergence is involved and the twins are artificial, which is conclusion B that drives the plot progression. And in this case, plot progression is Tommen being an ass clown.
Stop! Don't you see? We just need proof of a vergence, and those girls are the proof. This is our ticket home!
Oh, fuck off, show. This is exactly why Tommen should have been confined to the ship. And it's not even true. If you've drawn this conclusion by looking at their blood tests, then you've got the proof of your vergence. It's the blood tests. You don't actually need to kidnap the girls. You just need to ping the blood tests over to the council. Also, yeah, Tommen is setting in motion the chain of events that's going to lead to fire and death and mass destruction, and so the whole future plot of the Acolyte and his motive is still nothing more than, I'm bored of shrubs and I want to go home. The comparatively stronger motive, we fear these innocent girls are about to be sacrificed by evil witches so we need to go rescue them, isn't actually operative at this moment, even though it's the one thing the show actually bothered to set up, and even though it becomes operative from the moment they reach Fort Vagina. You actually don't need Tommen's homesickness beat, you've already got the stronger one, and you run with it for most of the episode except this bit for reasons. In this bit, the show had the opportunity to have motives determine its plot, but instead it opted for stupidity. Again. Squid Game hops on a speeder to chase Tommen, and my god, it's fucking ugly. In the meantime, we jump away to more episode 3 footage as Fannie Mae is escorted away by horny lesbian while Mother Anus Eye asks Occupational Safety and Health Administration whether she really truly deeply wants to become a Jedi. And this leads to a horny lesbian trying to get Fannie Mae to kill her sister in order to stop her sister from leaving because a horny lesbian loves her daughters too much. What the fuck is going on? I don't know what's happening.
You want to stop Osher from leaving? Then stop her.
Good girl. Get mad.
I don't understand what's happening. Inside, the witches are complaining that Mother Anusai is meant to be their leader, but she tells them their children are their future, so she has to let Occupational Safety and Health Administration go, even though if she lets her go, she can't be their future.
Her wish must be considered.
You may be their mother, but you are also our leader.
Right now, I choose mother.
I don't understand what's happening. Up until this moment, they've all described her as their mother, and her title to the coven is literally Mother Anusai, for fuck's sake.
Mother Anusai.
I am Anusai, mother of this coven. These women are under my protection.
I guess, I may be your mother, but I'm also a mother, and in this moment I choose mother. Didn't sound as cool. Fannie Mae getting mad apparently entails her smashing a door panel that horny lesbo could have smashed herself, but never mind.
No one can get in or out!
Witches, arm yourselves!
Isn't there just a fucking lock button or something? And gee, if you're arming yourselves and trying to keep the Jedi out, doesn't that mean you should be stationing guards covering Fort Vagina's exterior? Because otherwise, people might just climb right up the walls. And oh look, they're just climbing right up the walls, even though they have a spaceship and you'd think this would have given them a massive advantage. And why the fuck are either of these two even here? Tommen should have been locked up after his mind rape. Trinity absolutely shouldn't have trusted Squid Game to go after him, given Squid Game was the one arguing to go in and rescue the girls against orders. And now Squid Game is using the Force to watch episode 3, and oh god, it makes no sense, and I don't understand what's going on.
You can't go. We're stuck here now.
You cannot let them in your head again. Do you understand? I need you to help me get the girls.
How does Tommen know how to stop them getting in his head? And how do you know how to stop them getting in your head when this is the first time you've encountered this kind of magic? What if Tommen decides he really likes getting pegged by strong black women? I mean, he still really wants to go back to Coruscant. Up in the fortress, it's episode 3 all over again, and Fannie Mae is setting Occupational Safety and Health Administration's notebook on fire. And I said when reviewing episode 3 that this must all be proof that something more sinister was going on, because there's no way setting a notebook on fire on the top floor of Fort Vagina could cause explosions thousands of feet below at the bottom of Fort Vagina. I specifically used the words... We're stuck here now suggests that something has already happened, and that Fannie Mae was involved in whatever it was. Which means that what we are about to see, her grabbing Occupational Safety and Health Administration's inexplicably triangular book, using an inexplicable open candle in a room full of electric lighting to set the book on fire, and then the fire from that paper inexplicably engulfing metal and stone in a matter of seconds, well, it kind of suggests that all of that is probably a misdirect. The only alternative is that setting a piece of paper on fire led to this, and I don't believe even the Acolyte would believe that that is possible. But no, the Acolyte does believe that's possible. Fannie Mae's been told to get mad and stop Occupational Safety and Health Administration from leaving, so she got mad and smashed some door controls, and now she got mad so she's trying to burn her sister alive because she really wants her to stay, because I guess nobody bothered keeping tabs on her even though they're preparing to do battle to protect her from the Jedi. And then she decides she doesn't really want Occupational Safety and Health Administration to burn to death, even though that's the only reason she's here doing what she's doing, so she pathetically stamps on the fire, and of course that doesn't work, and then the door controls spark. And I think this is supposed to tell us that the fire has somehow caused a power surge that's going to overload the main reactor and cause the whole rest of the fire and the explosions, even though we've been told earlier that this is a mining station, so you'd think it'd have a fuse box or something, and if it doesn't, that's a massive Occupational Safety and Health Administration violation.
Dave, my mind is going.
Trinity flies the ship over and drops Kilnaka off because she can't land the ship there until she decides later on that she can. Horny Lesbian initiates attack pattern beta.
Get everyone in the common room. Prepare for battle.
Hey, Horny, you've got archers. Look at the archers. Look at them there. They're not in the common room, nor should they be.
I told you we cannot use violence.
And I told you I would die before I let the Jedi take my children.
But she doesn't. She quite explicitly doesn't. Horny Lesbian is the only witch who fucking survives this exchange when she turns into a fart cloud later and drifts away. Why the fuck does the only one who explicitly states she will sacrifice herself end up as the only one who explicitly does not sacrifice herself, show? Somehow, Tommen and Squid Game have teleported up several thousand feet into Fort Vagina. Squid Game, for some reason, forgets how to walk like a normal person.
was foolish to come back.
We come with noble intentions.
You wish to know if we will allow Osha to join you, to be raised by an institution instead of a family.
The twins, where did they come from? How were they created?
I have a question. Why are the witches armed with space arrows? Why have they got little LED lights in the tips, show? If they're using technology to make weapons, why the fuck are they using bows? Pick a goddamn lane.
Someday those noble intentions you all have will destroy every Jedi in the galaxy.
Ooh, foreshadowing. How spectacularly gay. You do realize, Leslie, that you can't just have characters meme the prequels in lieu of dialogue, right? What's her basis for this belief? Is this the kind of thing you could have maybe grounded in some kind of context? Say by having the witches actually mount a critique of the Jedi based upon their own experience. You know, the thing you've spectacularly failed to do, even though that is your job. If the witches had some old quarrel with the Jedi, it's possible she could have formed this belief by observation. But given we get absolutely none of that, no. Mother Anasai isn't just reading this script, she's reading the script from a completely different movie. Fannie Mae comes running out asking for help because she told Occupational Safety and Health Administration that she was going to kill her, then she accidentally went through with it. And Squid Game mixes her up for her twin. He calls her Occupational Safety and Health Administration.
Help!
Osha!
Help me!
Show. Remember how the idea 5 minutes ago was that Squid Game has a special bond with Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the Force draws him to her? Remember how Smilo said that's what happens in episode 6?
If you keep me here, Soul comes to you. He's found me before.
You think that his strength, that's your strength in the Force, Osha.
And it has been severally confirmed in this episode.
I feel a connection to Osha. I feel she's meant to be my Padawan.
Remember how that connection is so deep he can actually use the Force to watch episode 3 when he wants to. Yeah, funny that. Because despite their very strong and very personal bond, Squid Game's not interested in Fannie Mae, he's completely obsessed with Occupational Safety and Health Administration. No, somehow he can still mix them up in this scene, and he can mix them up in episode 5, and persist with that mix up until the very end of episode 6. It's almost as if there are no rules in operation here, and it's literally just whatever the fuck any given scene demands. And then, well, fuck it. Just watch.
Help me!
I was going to let Osha go.
What the fuck, Leslie? Leslie, what's going... Leslie, help us out here, Leslie. What the fuck is happening? We return to the interview. Question. When Fannie Mae asks for help, Mother Anasai not only starts dematerializing her own body, she makes Fannie Mae turn into a shadow as well. What can you tell us about what exactly is happening there and why? Leslie. Mother Anasai's main concern is that violence will be used in this confrontation. Jodie Turner-Smith and I talked about that meaning two things. One, that Anasai must have come from some place that utilized violence. It's something she would have seen when she was a child, something she would have endured in her coming of age. Why is none of this in the show, Leslie? So the main concern is obviously the safety of her children, the physical safety of them. The secondary concern is, I do not want my children or my legacy to be affected by something violent. I want to remove them from whatever that is. That is the same concern, Leslie. The why about the dematerializing is the first thing that Jodie and I talked about in seeding the character. What she is doing is what Jackie says in episode 4, that it's an honor to see anyone transform into the Force. I believe that Anasai is transforming herself and May into the Force in a way that doesn't kill them. End quote. Okay, that's totally useless. Thanks for nothing, Leslie. Transform into the Force is a euphemism for death. That's Yoda's line in Revenge of the Sith.
Death is a natural part of life. Rejoice for those around you who transform into the Force.
In Acolyte episode 5, Jackie explicitly uses it as a euphemism for killing innocent creatures.
I was able to sense that creature, but I disturbed it, and now it's dead.
It's always an honor to get to witness anything or anyone transform into the Force.
In both readings, it is a dying thing. You can't just transform into a fart cloud when you want to leave a scene. And what the fuck did you expect Squid Game to do in this situation? You randomly turned into a cloud of evil, and you tried to dissolve a small child. This is the kind of thing liable to be misinterpreted by a Jedi on guard against dark magic attacks. If you'd wanted to de-escalate the situation, Anasai, why did you wait until after he'd stabbed you to tell him you were trying trying to de-escalate? To tell him you were going to let him have the child? That seems like the kind of thing you should have led with, you daft cow. Why turn into a cloud of evil and try to turn a child into a cloud of evil if you were planning on handing the child over to the Jedi anyway? So yes, not only have the Jedi been serially and severely stupid to get us to this position, but now the witches are being serially and severely stupid in order that everything can go terribly wrong and lots of people can die. There are ways to do the whole tragedy of misunderstanding thing without having characters transform into fucking smoke demons for no reason. I'm glad you're dead. All of you deserve to die for purely eugenic reasons as much as anything.
Mama!
May.
Run! Fuck me, cringe. So the witch archers start shooting their sci-fi arrows, which are exactly as useful as normal arrows, which is to say they are not at all useful against the lightsaber. Meanwhile, Squid Game and Horny Lesbian kind of, maybe not quite, fight. Squid Game doesn't use his lightsaber in this scene, even though he's against an enemy who is the very definition of armed, because if he were using it, he'd win instantly. This is why I kept saying across my earlier videos that the kill an unarmed Jedi rule has no actual basis in the story. It was always just a convenient way to stop the Jedi instantly winning any combative exchange. Squid Game, use your lightsaber! Fuck it, use the Force! Do something! There are no stakes in this fight because the fight's only happening because you're choosing not to win it. You had your lightsaber out to take on the smoke demon. Why the fuck have you turned it off now? Tommen's got some moves though, I'll give him that.
Fight me!
Cringe. But no, he won't fight her because he's very sad that he accidentally killed a smoke demon that he had every reason to kill because it jump scared him. But never mind, because that short-circuiting light switch outside Occupational Safety and Health Administration's bedroom has now caused a massive Death Star-like chain reaction that's tearing apart this actual mining facility from the inside. Because if there's one place you'd expect to have no safety measures at all to prevent exactly this sort of thing from occurring, it is a mining facility. Oh, see? See what I mean? See why they had to contrive stupid reasons for the Jedi not using their lightsabers? It is that easy for them to win a fight. But the thing is, if you're doing that to disarm an opponent but not to kill them, then it just makes earlier exchanges even dumber. Trinity versus Fannie Mae in episode 1 in particular. If you're allowed to use your lightsaber to de-escalate, which you should be allowed to do, and which Squid Game casually does here, then that fight in episode 1 should never have happened, and Trinity should never have died. Horny Lesbian then turns herself into a fart and floats away for a later season that will hopefully never happen, even though she told us she was going to die to protect her children. But never mind, I guess she forgot. And yes, by the way, we've got confirmation that she's not dead. It's the Leslie Harford interview from earlier again. I think I may even have quoted this section already, but to leave you in no doubt whatsoever, question. Considering this angry, powerful, Force-sensitive witch might be out there, and we also have this unexplained, powerful dark side user out there as well, is it possible that Horny Lesbian and Smilo Ren know each other? Leslie. Oh, I can answer that. They do not know each other. But what I will say as a tease, if we are able to explore this story more, her species will tell you a little bit about where she ends up. So yeah, she's off to Dathomir. Good-o.
It's happening again.
You should not have brought him here.
No. My mind is fortified.
She's trying to get in their heads.
Sorceress! Fortify your mind!
I can't believe that is the inspiration they're taking. It's like there's some sort of weaponized gaseous syndrome that everyone who works for Disney contracts. But you know whose mind isn't fortified? Well, for the sheer lack of anything else to do, it's Kilnaka. The Wookiee has been infected with lesbianism. Probably explains why he doesn't shave. Even though he's presumably a Jedi Knight in rank at least, just like Squid Game, and neither Squid Game nor Trinity has been mind-raped, but whatever. Maybe it's because the witches are all doing it together, and this is the power of many that we heard so much about, but that still doesn't explain why they wouldn't just use it against Squid Game or Tommen again or Trinity. No, who gives a fuck? All you damned fools who thought it'd be cool to finally see a Wookiee with a lightsaber, well, it's not. It's just really clunky and awkward. It's worth noting that Kilnaka manages to smack Tommen to the ground quite easily here. Because remember, Wookiees are incredibly strong, and lesbians have a type advantage over twinks. Lesbians, and I mean Wookiees, can even rip your arms out of your sockets if they want to, which the Boba Fett show confirmed was no idle threat. And it's worth remembering that because, oh look, Tommen can actually match his strength one-armed in a really awkward reverse grip block where he has no leverage. This is because he's not allowed to die here. He has to be kept around so he can kill himself later. Speaking of which, why does Tommen kill himself later? We've got about as much as we are ever going to get from this episode to justify it. Yes, he's been a bit of a fool because his passionate want not to do gardening caused him to stupidly run back to Fort Vagina, but everything that's happened since then has actually exonerated him. It was Squid Game who took over and insisted they enter the fortress, and he did that because it was generally agreed the young children were in grave danger and needed saving, which is a noble motive, and acknowledged by the show as such. And it was Squid Game who understandably stabbed the suddenly smoke demon, which was pretty well justified in the circumstances. And it's Trinity who's going to accidentally kill the rest of the witches. We'll come to that shortly. And they do end up saving children from an actual real fire that actually really destroyed Fort Vagina. So what? Tommen killed himself because he was mildly embarrassed? Kilnaka's later appearance has more support. He's drawing those spiral patterns on his wall, one assumes, because of something he saw while he was being mind-raped by witches. But he didn't fucking kill himself because of it, and he's about as responsible for all this as Tommen is, which is to say he's not really responsible for any of it, because he was mind-raped by witches. Oh god, it's still going. So Tommen has the strength to hold Kilnaka off, but he and Squid Game combined can't pull Kilnaka's arm back. That's not how strength works, I don't think. Why is Squid Game even grabbing his arm anyway? Twat him in the head with your lightsaber hilt. Knock him out. Use the Force. Kylo's theme plays again in this fight sequence. It keeps popping up. It made a small amount of sense when it first accompanied Smilo himself in episode 5, on the assumption that Disney is about to retcon its own lore and make him a Ren. But it really doesn't belong in this scene at all. Then Kilnaka starts choking Squid Game and somehow doesn't completely crush his windpipe instantly, even though he's a Wookiee and can do that. And then suddenly Trinity. Hooray! Hey, Trinity. Where do you put the ship, Trinity? I thought you couldn't land the ship here, Trinity.
There's no way that we can land the ship there.
Did you climb all the way up the side of the vagina in 5 minutes? You are a woman, I'm sure you know your way around a vagina, but I don't think you could scale the entire thing in 5 minutes. Trinity somehow does battle using the Force with the witches, who are using magic, inside Kilnaka's head. And in disconnecting the witches from his head, she kills them. She kills all of them. They just sort of disconnect and die, like Bluetooth has been turned off. And she did it by accident from that interview again. Question: why did they all die when Trinity freed Kilnaka? Leslie. This was a big question when we were working on the episode. To me, it was very important because it told 2 stories. One, that Trinity, despite her being completely and utterly the consummate Jedi in this episode, by neglecting her Padawan until he goes mad, I did feel it was important that she also misjudged something, like neglecting her Padawan until he goes mad. If we were going to explore those themes, she couldn't just be this infallible Jedi. She's not. She also has to have something else going on with her. And I think what she did is, in the moment, in trying to sever the connection between Kilnaka and the witches, she dealt with a power that she did not understand and was unfamiliar with. Question: did she kill them? Leslie. Yeah, she didn't know that was going to happen to them. Question: so it wasn't intentional? Leslie. No, she did not know. All she was thinking was, I have to save him. Again, it starts to become a selfish want. I must save this colleague of mine. I have to do this. If I don't do this, then something terrible could happen to him. We've seen what they're capable of. I've seen them do this to my Padawan. They're now doing it to an incredibly powerful Jedi Master. What do I do? Okay, I'm going to make this decision. But she doesn't know what the consequences of that decision reaction will be, the same way that Squid Game doesn't know what his actions will mean for Occupational Safety and Health Administration's future. Tommen doesn't really put together because he's so young that the consequences of his actions are going to lead to all of this falling apart, even though that isn't what happens. Trinity had to also make that mistake in order to continue exploring that idea. End quote. But Leslie, if she didn't know what she was doing, how did she even know how to fight them to begin with? She must have had some idea what she was doing, otherwise she'd not have been doing it, Leslie. She shouldn't have had any idea what to do because the Jedi have never encountered this kind of magic before, and they don't know how it works. And we've established that nobody thought it was worth asking Tommen anything about his experience. But if Trinity knows enough to do whatever she's doing, and she knows enough to win at whatever she's doing, then how could she not have known what she was doing when she forced the witches out of Kilnacker's mind? It's almost as if none of this makes any fucking sense at all, Leslie. Anyway, rip lesbians, they all died to protect the children, except the mother of the children, who said she'd die to protect them. She survived. She's so incompetent she can't even die properly. Lesbians get genocided and the porn industry is thrown into disarray, and then we jump over to our penultimate recontextualization, the bridge scene, where Fannie Mae falls an indeterminate distance down a large hole and so inevitably does not die. In episode 3, it played out like this: Squid Game running in seemingly as the bridge collapsed and only being able to save Occupational Safety and Health Administration. Whereas here, he arrives in time to save both of them, but he doesn't, because he's an idiot. Minor quibble. None of this would have been necessary had the girls not just stood there shouting their names at each other like they're fucking Pokemon. Major quibble. Squid Game, if your strength in the Force is very powerful, yes, I'm still not over that line, then none of this would have been necessary had you grabbed the girls and not the bridge. If you can lift the weight of both halves of the bridge with the girls standing on it, then you can much more easily lift just the girls and leave the bridge to fall. And we know you can lift people, even fully grown adults, because you've already been shown doing it twice. Look, here you are denying Occupational Safety and Health Administration a well-deserved Darwin Award. By lifting her back up the cliff, she accidentally walked off backwards. And here you are lifting Fannie Mae while reading her mind in episode 2, back before you forgot that was a thing you can do. And hell, they don't even think to check whether Fanny's still alive. Reach out with your feelings, Squid Game. Go fetch a fucking metal detector. It's a giant hole. This is Star Wars. You should know better. But there we have it. Squid Game had to choose, even though he didn't really have to choose. And he chose Occupational Safety and Health Administration, even though he could have saved both of them. Because he has a deep and special connection with her, even though she flunks out of the academy a few years later and they didn't keep in touch and he keeps confusing her for a twin. Because the Jedi must have deep and special connections to their Padawans, even though he left Jackie's body to be eaten by fucking space jackals or something. Our final scene takes us to the Jedi ship traveling through hyperspace. It takes time in this episode because the writers needed to.
I'm sorry.
Kilnacker, send a message to Coruscant. We're going home.
I don't really know what Tommen's apologizing for. Yes, he was a bit of a tit, but it was Squid Game who led the charge into the fortress. It was Kilnacker who let himself get mind raped, even though he should know better. It was Trinity who accidentally murdered all the lesbians, and the only reason Tommen acted up is that she completely ignored him for 2 months, even as he went mad, even though he is her apprentice. If anything, Tommen's the most innocent party in all this, so naturally he's the one who kills himself.
I warned you not to interfere. I warned both of you.
But you told Squid Game to go after Tommen, and you didn't keep Tommen on the ship even though he'd had his mind violated. I'm pretty sure a lot of this is on you, Trinity. And fuck, you seem to believe the twins were about to be sacrificed.
I wanted the twins to be safe.
With no thought of the consequences.
I had to make a choice.
Master! What will we tell the council?
Well, I think you'd be pretty justified in telling them the truth from your point of view. You encountered a bunch of dark side witches. You learned they'd manipulated a Force virgins to try and create twins, which comes suspiciously close to an actual Jedi Messiah prophecy. You believed the children were about to be sacrificed by the witches, but when you tried to intervene, you got attacked by evil smoke demons. So you had to fight to defend yourselves, and tragically the witches died, because their ancient rickety mining facility overloaded and exploded. But hey, at least you saved a possible space Jesus. You were of protecting the innocent, just like a Jedi should. Yes, you might get a ticking off if you tell the council how stupid you were in coming to some of these beliefs in the first place. Master Yoda might want to know why you didn't dispel your concerns by mind-reading one of the children, or why you chose to hack into Fort Vagina rather than knocking on the door, or why you generally acted in the most suspicious way you possibly could to put the witches on the defensive, and why you neglected your Padawan so much he was prepared to get pegged by a powerful black lady. But you know, mistakes do happen, and based on the information you had, you made the right decisions. It's a teachable moment. Or I guess you could orchestrate some lame cover-up that rests on the council asking no pertinent questions, never following up on your search for the Virgins on Brendok, never mind reading any of you, never spotting Tommen's distress, nor Squid Games, nor Kilnaggers, even though at least 2 of them have to go through the trials to attain the rank of Master in the next few years. Truly, truly there are no depths of stupidity to which this show will not drag the Jedi in a bid to force its threadbare plot forwards.
We will tell the council the truth. May burned down the witch's fortress and everyone was lost.
Indara, I must face the council.
Why would you do that to her?
Hey, you guys do realize Kilnacker isn't in the room, right? If you're trying to get your story straight, it might be a good idea to have all the conspirators in the room while you're discussing it. Anyway, this is the bit where Trinity, whose adherence to the Prime Directive Star Wars now has for some reason, was so strong that she refused to intervene in a suspected human sacrifice, decides that actually Squid Game has no right not to intervene in Occupational Safety and Health Administration's life.
I must face the council.
Why would you do that to her? After everything this little girl has lost tonight, you take away her dream as well? Before you throw yourself at the mercy of the council, ask yourself why you made this choice.
How dare you try and stop this girl being sacrificed? You should have left her to her fate. Also, how dare you leave her to her fate? You have a responsibility to intervene. Women, eh? You just can't win. Anyway, Occupational Safety and Health Administration wakes up and we play out the end of episode 7. It's the same as the end of episode 3. It's nice to see someone's trying to optimize the budget, otherwise someone else would have less money to waste. Now you might be thinking that with the end of the episode, we have reached the end of the wrong. But no, we haven't. What else? What else is there to ruin about Star Wars, you ponder? Haven't we basically covered the whole thing? Ah, well, you see, the Acolyte is breaking new ground. Until now, no one has ever thought to ruin the end credits. But that all ends today. Like so many shows made for a female audience, which women don't watch, but shh, it's the thought that counts. The Acolyte episode 7 closes with a song. No, fuck off, Amandla. I said a song, not a syndrome. Would you like to hear the song? I bet you would. You can already imagine it, can't you? The overproduction, the layered auto-tune, the breathy female vocalist whispering in ASMR, where ASMR stands for atrociously shitty musical rendition. Everybody put your hands in the air.
Parts of me will die with you, and I think it's gonna be the good part. Thought I had a life with you. You know the power of 2.
Okay, that's enough. If I wanted to listen to a robot singing, I would be playing Daft Punk. This is not fucking Grey's Anatomy, ladies. This is not the CW. This is not fucking Batwoman. This is supposed to be Star Wars. Why is it that ladyfying things inevitably leads to awful musical numbers? Do women really go in for this kind of generic pap? You'd hope not, because one likes to believe that the female species is not completely tasteless. Then again, I've listened to Taylor Swift. She's a social contagion. Maybe you just need one woman to like this crap. Then, by a miracle of synchronization, eventually you end up with a critical mass of women who elevate your meritless crap to the stratosphere without it ever encountering critical faculties. Unfortunately for the Acolyte, but happily for the reputation of all women everywhere, this seems not to have worked so far, and there's no sign the power of 2, yes, that is unironically what it's fucking called, has done anything to change that. Long may the fairer sex resist its temptations. Unlike Tommen. Tommen is shit. That anyway brings us to the end of the episode and the presumed conclusion of the Acolyte's backstory arc, and what a dramatic anticlimax it was. Burning paper really can cause entire fortresses to explode. Witches really are made of fat. The Acolyte really has nothing at all to say about anything that matters. What a thrilling waste of everyone's time and money. But that's it for now. There's only one left. Thank fuck. Then I can finally sleep. See you in the next one.